After my younger brother's car crash, he wouldn't stop claiming he'd come back from the future. He stormed into my workplace and started yelling at my strict boss. Brother-in-law. I was mortified. Blake Morgan had just finished reprimanding me for a work error. Now, with him even more furious, I worried I'd lose my position entirely. As I attempted to pull my brother from the office, he grabbed onto Blake's belt. Brother-in-law, why haven't you said anything yet? Are you some sort of ninja? You've got my sister's name inked on your lower back. What's stopping you? The little menace was spouting absolute nonsense, and I couldn't make sense of any of it. Blake looked positively livid, his complexion flushing with irritation. That night, I sat down with a sinking feeling to draft my resignation letter. But then, I accidentally saw some text Blake had sent to my brother. How many kids do we have in the future? Do they take after her, or me? Marriage troubles. Really? Is someone attempting to take her from me? Which bloody fool is it? I had just been scolded in my boss's office when my mom rang. Mom, is Oliver awake? Oliver is my younger brother, currently finishing his final year of high school. 2 nights prior, he had an accident while riding his bike home after late classes. He'd been unconscious in the hospital for 2 days. If I hadn't been so distracted worrying about him, I wouldn't have accidentally sent that message intended for a client to my boss, which resulted in that lengthy scolding. Yes, he's conscious. Mom's voice was animated. The doctor's checking him over now. I continued. How is he? Are his vision and hearing fine? Does he know who you are? Mom went quiet for several seconds. I started to panic. Is he deaf or blind? Neither deaf nor blind. It's just... Mom hesitated. He's saying some quite strange things. Suddenly there was chaos on the other end. I could hear my brother calling out enthusiastically. I must be the chosen one. Mom, are you speaking with Amy? Hand me the phone. After some shuffling noises, Amy, listen carefully. I've time traveled from 2035. Believe me, I can help everyone get wealthy. I ended the call with a blank stare. Does this little idiot think I have time for his games? The company's been experiencing some financial difficulties recently, and the boss hasn't been in the greatest spirits. The entire office mood has been quite tense. When I came back after the call, my coworkers gave me pitying glances. A colleague nearby whispered, Amy, are you okay? I was puzzled. Why wouldn't I be? She gave me a thumbs up. You're incredible. Being lectured by Devil Morgan for that long, and barely reacting. Devil Morgan was their nickname for our boss, Blake Morgan. She abruptly stopped speaking and looked past me. Blake was exiting his office. He was tall with wide shoulders and long limbs. His features were striking, and even his simple suit had a certain controlled elegance. He entered the elevator while on his phone. Once the elevator door shut, the office mood immediately lightened. Looks like Devil Morgan has resolved the company's financial problems. He really works himself to exhaustion. True. He doesn't just pressure us, he pressures himself twice as hard. Hey Amy, you attended the same university as him, didn't you? He was your senior. The discussion suddenly focused on me. I nodded. Was Devil Morgan like this at university? I paused. Like what? My colleague considered for a moment before saying, detached and harsh. Blake was indeed my senior at university, and the head of the community service organization I joined back then. I didn't interact with him much, and I wouldn't say I really knew him, so I didn't want to make hasty conclusions about his character. I deflected my colleague's questions with a chuckle and walked to the break area with my cup. My coworkers were still talking outside. My thoughts, however, drifted for a moment. Actually, I knew the response to that question immediately. Was Blake really as detached and harsh in university as they claimed? I don't believe so. Not just back then. I surveyed the break area, and something occurred to me. Our company was still relatively young as possible. Yet, the break area was consistently well supplied. Ever since an intern collapsed from low blood sugar, they designated a special area for chocolates and various candies. The women's restroom was always stocked with emergency feminine products. When it came to client dinners, Blake would attend them himself whenever feasible, and if he absolutely couldn't, He'd only request the male staff to accompany. These were subtle things that most people overlooked. Blake was genuinely trying his hardest to carry all the burden himself. Blake returned to the office before our shift concluded. He appeared relaxed. A co-worker murmured, "The problem must be sorted. No late hours tonight." It was better than just no late hours. Shortly, we all got a text notification saying we could have tomorrow off with pay. After 2 seconds of stillness, the office exploded. I adore our boss. I adore quantum innovations. I adore Devil Morgan. The final exclamation came just as Blake stepped from his office. The person who yelled immediately buried their face in documents. Blake wasn't upset. He simply gave us a calm look. "Leave early." His attention finally settled on me. I quickly acknowledged, "Yes, sir." If the boss was departing, why should we employees remain? I instantly began gathering my things to escape. While waiting for the elevator behind Blake, I got a call from my mom. "Your brother's been released from the hospital. He mentioned he's going to meet you after work." "That boy meet me?" I frowned. "Where is he at the moment?" "He should be almost at your workplace." She clarified that Oliver had slipped away while she was completing the discharge forms, leaving just a note. I felt my head throb. Right, I'll bring him home. After disconnecting, the elevator came. I stepped in with Blake. The elevator wasn't roomy. Despite standing in opposite corners to keep maximum space, it still felt confined. I caught myself staring at Blake's back, my mind wandering.
His voice startled me.
"Is your boyfriend meeting you?" Boyfriend? I was confused for a moment. Remembering my phone discussion, I understood his confusion. I quickly clarified. "No, it's my younger brother." Blake's slightly creased brow subtly relaxed, and he nodded. "I see. My error." Quiet fell again. I focused on the floor indicator, watching it gradually count down to 1. When the doors parted, I instantly noticed someone with bandages wrapped around his head, scanning the entrance hall. "Oliver."
I hurried over.
"What are you doing here?" "Amy." Oliver looked at me enthusiastically. "You've suddenly gotten so young. I can't adjust to it." I responded, "Have you gone mad? Let me share a secret." Oliver leaned in mysteriously. "I've time-traveled from 2035. I examined him very carefully. "Didn't the doctor recommend a mental evaluation? How could they just discharge you like this?" Seeing my skepticism, he grew agitated. His attention fell on Blake, who was conversing with someone at reception, and his eyes brightened. "Isn't that?" He gestured at Blake, stammering. I grabbed his hand. "Don't point. That's my boss." Before I could finish, a deafening yell erupted. "Brother-in-law!" Oliver broke from my hold and rushed toward Blake. He embraced Blake tightly, patting his back several times. "Brother-in-law, we had a car crash while out for drinks. Did you time travel back to 2025 with me? I was so frightened being here by myself. Thank goodness you're here." Then he cupped Blake's face and planted a kiss on it. I turned to stone. My colleagues, who had just left the elevator and witnessed everything, also froze. Blake stared at him in shock, then glanced at me. He rapidly regained his poise, breaking from Oliver's hold. Attempting to preserve his composure, he asked through clenched teeth, "Would you care to explain who you are?" "It's me, Oliver." Oliver gestured at me. "Your wife's little brother, your most devoted brother-in-law." Everyone's eyes shifted to me. My face burned as I attempted to drag Oliver by his collar to remove him, but he was already 17 and fairly strong. He escaped from my grip, spun around, dropped to the floor, and wrapped his arms around Blake's legs firmly. My colleagues stood there bewildered, completely forgetting about leaving. Some even discreetly pulled out their phones to capture photos. I couldn't bear it anymore. "Oliver, what on earth has possessed you?" "You don't get it," he yelled back at me, his eyes moistening, appearing even more distressed than I was. "I've somehow time-traveled back 3 months before my final exams. How am I meant to comprehend all those textbooks now? Making me sit those exams? You might as well end me. Mom doesn't trust me."
"You don't trust me."
"Nobody trusts what I'm claiming. You have no clue how devastated I am." Oliver wailed loudly. then cried out to Blake. Blake, my dear brother-in-law, do you truly not know me? How come I'm the sole one who returned when we were both in that car wreck? Blake finally understood what was occurring. He looked at me, then at Oliver, with a peculiar expression. Then he asked the question everyone present wanted answered. What did you just call me? Brother-in-law, Oliver said. You married my sister in 2031, and in 2032 you had a daughter named Sophie. Oh, speaking of Sophie, that little demon is completely wild. I covered his mouth. Stop talking, or we'll both perish right here. Oliver went silent. Compared to rambling nonsense here, he probably thought survival was more crucial, too. I felt like I was losing my sanity. I hastily apologized to Blake and turned to exit. Oliver rose from the floor to follow me. Perhaps because he hadn't fully healed from the car crash, he felt lightheaded and reflexively grabbed onto the closest thing he could reach, Blake's belt, and accidentally untucked his shirt in the process. I'm so sorry, future brother-in-law. Oliver quickly apologized. He was being courteous and attempted to help tuck the shirt back. Blake was already chuckling in exasperation as he stepped back. I stood at the entrance watching this circus unfold, wanting to laugh, but couldn't. Bloody hell. Oliver suddenly stared at Blake's lower back. You've got ink there. After experiencing so many dramatic events, Blake hadn't shown much response, but his expression shifted when he heard Oliver's words. He casually put on his jacket, disregarding Oliver. But Oliver kept staring at him in astonishment and dropped a bombshell. You had my sister's name tattooed on your lower back in 2025, and you managed to wait until 2030 to confess. Blake, are you some kind of ninja?
Boom.
I felt like lightning had hit me, leaving me completely dazed.
Why?
Why did Oliver have to say such absurd things at my workplace? Why did he want to destroy my career that was finally gaining momentum? Perhaps he remembered that time I fed him dirt when we were children. My head was ringing. Meanwhile, Blake stared at Oliver, his eyes full of confusion. He reflexively glanced at me, but quickly averted his gaze. Gradually, his face flushed, the color spreading to his ears and neck. His typically stoic face suddenly became expressive. Wonderful. The boss was clearly furious. Well, I might as well resign before he dismisses me. What should I do now? Only one choice. Pretend to faint. I rolled my eyes and dropped to the floor. Sis, what's wrong? Amy Bennett. Everyone hurried to help me sit in a chair, and Blake's voice was tense. I'll bring the car around. Look after her. Indeed, every boss dreads employees having incidents at their workplace. As soon as he departed, I opened my eyes. My colleague gasped. Please thank the boss for me. I grabbed Oliver's ear and bolted, running like an Olympic sprinter, then leaped into a waiting cab. Drive quickly. Watching the company building shrink in the rearview mirror, I released a long exhale and sank into the seat. Finally, I was safe again. Oliver remained exceptionally quiet during the journey, not uttering a word. When we arrived home, he darted into his room and secured the door. Mom was confused. What's happening? I said, Mom, better hide anything sharp. I might not be able to stop myself from becoming your only child. Without a word, Mom went to secure the kitchen knives first. I approached Oliver's door and knocked. Come out. You need to explain yourself today. Oliver's voice trembled. The thing is, you won't accept my explanation.
I'm sorry, Amy. Truly sorry.
I didn't intend to.
Just settle down first.
We'll discuss when you're less furious. I dropped my hand hopelessly. I was drained. Genuinely drained. Like a phantom, I drifted back to my room and sat there numbly for a while. Thinking about everything that occurred at the office earlier, it all seemed ridiculous. Oliver said Blake had my name tattooed on his lower back. Said he fancied me. Said we would marry in the future. How absurd. Back in university, Blake had even helped arrange my first relationship. How could he possibly fancy me? I sighed and opened my laptop, deciding to compose a resignation letter just in case. As soon as the screen illuminated, I saw several messaging app notifications pop up. It was Oliver's account. During his final exams the other day, Mom had confiscated his phone. He must have logged into the app on my laptop while using it for online classes in my room. I clicked to open it, about to log his account out, when I saw the newest message. Blake, are you Oliver? Brother-in-law. I'm my sis's future brother-in-law. Haha, can't believe you've maintained the same phone number all these years. Good thing I memorized it. Blake, how did you know about my lower back tattoo? I stared at the screen, reading this line 3 times over. Brother-in-law. I'm my sis's. I'm from 2035. In 2035, we frequently go to the spa together, so naturally I know. Bro, do you trust me? Trembling, JPG Blake was quiet for a considerable while before sending one word. Yes. Simultaneously, I heard Oliver cheering next door. Finally, someone trusts me. I sat at my laptop deep in contemplation. I promise I wasn't attempting to snoop, but the person on the other end was Blake, my distant boss. The temptation was simply too overwhelming. In the few minutes I'd zoned out, they discussed quite a bit more. Blake, will your sister and I actually get married? Brother-in-law. I'm my sis's. Naturally. I personally escorted her into the wedding vehicle. Blake, how many kids will we have? Do they resemble her or me? Brother-in-law. I'm my sis's, just Sophie, and she resembles you. When my sister was delivering her, she hemorrhaged severely. You were sobbing your heart out at the hospital and refused to let her have any more kids. The other side went silent again. Brother-in-law. I'm my sis's. You and my sister were genuinely happy together. Actually, if it wasn't for that guy, you wouldn't suddenly be discussing divorce. Blake replied instantly. Divorce? What occurred? Who's that guy? Is some damn fool attempting to take your sister? I doubted this was genuinely Blake's account. How could he possibly say things like that? I didn't know how to process as I watched their discussion. I recognized every word, but strung together, I couldn't quite comprehend what they meant. Brother-in-law. I'm my sis's. I don't know the specifics, but I think it has something to do with my sister's first boyfriend. Future brother-in-law. Why don't you just confess now? These extra years will allow you time to strengthen your relationship. Then that garbage first love won't be able to threaten your marriage at all. Blake, but your sister doesn't fancy me. Brother-in-law. I'm my sis's. Who claims? My sister still keeps your university ID photo. I jumped up, rushed outside, kicked open Oliver's door, seized his phone, and deleted that message all in one fluid motion. Oliver curled up on his bed. Amy, what are you doing? How did you know I have Blake's ID photo? I grabbed his collar and demanded, Did you rummage through my belongings? Oliver blinked, finally understanding. You were monitoring my chat with Blake. After half an hour of heated discussion, Oliver and I sat in silence, facing each other. I admit I now accept your story about time travel. Still, I couldn't help but ask, what are the winning lottery numbers for next week? Oliver replied, Do you genuinely think I would recall that? What's going to be on the final English exam? Oliver, I forgot.
Fine.
I accept you've returned from the future, Oliver. Huh. With your brain capacity, it's entirely normal that you can't remember. I warned him repeatedly not to message with Blake anymore. And only after securing his agreement did I stumble back to my room. I collapsed onto my bed. My mind was in turmoil. Blake Morgan fancies me. Fancies me. This was too surreal. Physical exhaustion rapidly overcame mental excitement, and soon after lying down, I fell into a deep sleep. I had a dream about my university days from long ago. When I first started uni, I only joined the community service organization and no other societies. In my spare time, I preferred staying alone in the library. Once, because I'd had too many cold beverages, my period arrived early and inevitably stained my trousers. While I was hunched over my desk, feeling helpless, I heard someone tap the edge of the table. When I looked up, the young man had already departed. He'd left his jacket on the table along with an emergency sanitary pad. The man hadn't left any note, but his student ID card had fallen from his pocket. That's how I discovered his name and course. Ethan Davis, who was in the same department as Blake, the CSO president I just met. I heard they were even roommates. I took the cleaned clothes to the society and asked Blake to return them. Blake's face was always expressionless. He took the clothes with just a simple nod. But because of this incident, I started developing feelings for Ethan, whom I never properly met. I secretly noted his class schedule, discreetly inquired if he was single, and casually wandered around the basketball court, hoping to encounter him. When I finally gathered the courage to ask Blake about Ethan's interests, Blake, usually so reserved, talked at length that afternoon. Finally, he asked directly, "Do you fancy him?" My mind went blank, and I nodded mindlessly. After a moment's silence, Blake asked, "Would you like me to assist?" He proved to be quite the matchmaker. 2 months later, Ethan and I officially started dating. He was my first love, and I cherished and valued him. The relationship was undeniably sweet at first, but amid the sweetness, I often felt drained. Ethan and I had vastly different personalities. He was an absolute extrovert who adored socializing, being in crowds, and helping others. When I mentioned our first meeting to him, he seemed rather confused. He'd assisted so many people that I was just one among many. I considered myself a low-energy person, and forcing myself to fit into Ethan's bustling life left me exhausted and depleted. Our breakup was amicable. After the split, we gradually lost contact. I naturally labeled Blake as ex-boyfriend's roommate, and to make things easier for myself, I quit the community service organization and severed ties with him as well. The following day, I slept in until late morning. The work group chat was dead silent. I suspected they had probably created a new group without Blake and me, chatting away freely. I got up and freshened up, and that's when Oliver emerged from his room. "Amy, where are you going today?" "Going out with Hannah for a bit." "Hannah is my best friend. I've got quite a lot on my mind lately, and I need someone wise to help me sort out." But as soon as I said that, Oliver's face turned an odd shade of crimson. I frowned at him. "What's wrong with you? Can I come with you?"
No.
I rejected without hesitation. He kept pestering me even after I'd finished doing my makeup. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Give me one valid reason." Oliver's expression suddenly turned serious. "If I tell you, will you accept it?" I nodded. Oliver took a deep breath. "In the future, Hannah becomes my wife."
Splash.
I threw my glass of water in his face. "You're not even in her league. And you dare to fancy my best friend." Oliver fell silent. After spending the afternoon chatting with Hannah at the coffee shop, I felt much lighter. She said, "Why worry so much? The future is unknown and uncontrollable.
Just go with the flow."
Don't waste your energy worrying about things that haven't occurred yet." I thought she made a lot of sense. The next day at work, my mindset was much more stable, though I still felt somewhat uncomfortable with the subtle glances from my colleagues. But after Blake arrived, the pressure I was feeling decreased significantly. They stared shamelessly at Blake's lower back, their eyes almost materializing into hands that could lift his shirt to get a proper look. Blake appeared as composed as ever, very calm. I, on the other hand, was obviously trying too hard. Throughout the day, I deliberately avoided being alone with Blake, even avoiding eye contact with him. By evening, just as I had finished my work and was packing up to leave, I received a message from Blake. "Wait for me. I need to speak with you." I had just stood up, but immediately sat back down. I didn't have to wait long before Blake came out, and I followed him into the elevator. The elevator was empty, and we stood side by side. I broke the silence first. "Is there something specific you wanted to discuss with me, boss?" Blake glanced at me. "Yes, it's personal." He pressed the B1 button. "I'll drive you home. We can talk on the way." Blake lived in the neighboring complex to mine, quite close by. Sitting in his passenger seat, I felt completely dazed. I was afraid he might have heard Oliver's wild speculations and say something irrational. I feared our simple boss-employee relationship would change, making things extremely awkward at work. Fortunately, Blake seemed much more sensible than Oliver. He drove steadily, slowly merging into traffic. I figured even if he wanted to say something, it would be tactful, gentle, leaving room for interpretation. "You know, don't you?" Blake kept his eyes on the road ahead, speaking calmly.
But I fancy you.
I froze. What happened to your brother is indeed bizarre, but I trust him since he's brought certain things to light. I think there's no point in me hiding anymore. Blake glanced at the rearview mirror, but quickly looked away. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles turning slightly pale. My gaze fell on his hands, and I suddenly realized he wasn't as calm as he appeared. He was nervous, too. I tried to maintain my composure and asked, "When did it start?" "During your first year at university," Blake said with a slight smile. "When you came for the community service organization interview. It was just a formality, but you looked so nervous. I gave water to every new student who applied, but out of all those people, you were the only one who said thank you. I was surprised, just because of that. Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But yes, just because of that made me notice you. And I found myself looking at you longer and longer. The more I looked, the more I fancied what I saw." I fidgeted with my fingers, my face suddenly turning crimson. How was I supposed to handle Blake, usually so reserved and cool, being so direct? I turned away and lowered the window slightly. The cool air helped me regain some of my rationality, at least enough to think clearly. "Thank you," I said. Blake paused for a moment, then shook his head with a smile. He seemed to recall something else. "Later, I saw you at the library once. You were hunched over the table, looking like you had a stomach ache. I brought you some things, including a jacket I borrowed from my roommate." He paused, turning to look at me. Then he realized, "It seems you know about that." I nodded.
Ido.
After breaking up with Ethan, he dated several other girls. Due to coursework, we unexpectedly crossed paths again. By then, we could sit down and talk like friends. He always had lots to talk about. We talked about the library, about our first meeting. That's when Ethan figured it out. "That jacket was mine, yes, but I wasn't the one who helped you," he said frankly. "Blake borrowed it from me." That's when I learned the truth. My first love was based on a misunderstanding. After that, my feelings for Blake became complicated. Did I fancy him? I couldn't really say. But compared to others, my gaze would linger on him a bit longer, a bit more often. He was quiet, rarely spoke to me. Whenever our eyes met by accident, he would quickly look away. So, at the time, I thought Blake didn't fancy me, so I buried that small bit of affection I had. After getting my response, Blake remained silent for a while. During rush hour, the traffic moved in starts and stops, and we soon hit another long red light. The car stood still in traffic, and an awkward silence filled the interior. As the light turned green, Blake pressed the accelerator and spoke. "I thought you didn't know about that." Because of that, I had many wishful thoughts. I froze, understanding his meaning. My fingers tensed nervously. Blake glanced at me. "Don't be nervous. I'm not asking for anything, and you don't need to give me any answer. Telling you how I feel is my own choice. Once this drive is over, you can forget everything I've said, and at work, everything will be just like before." Just like before. I don't doubt Blake can do it. After all, he's managed to hide his feelings perfectly for many years. But what about me? I can't do that. When I got home, I remained in a dazed state for quite a while. Oliver passed by me and said, "Why do you look like you've seen a ghost? Did Blake confess to you?" I spat out the water I had just taken a sip of. I turned to glare at him. "Have you been in contact with him again?" Oliver raised both hands in surrender.
I'm innocent.
"Just a lucky guess, Amy. You're being way too obvious." He pulled up a chair and sat down beside me.
I'm curious.
"What are you hesitating about?" "What am I hesitating about? There's just too much. I'm even wondering if I should go to work tomorrow." As it turned out, I was overthinking. Since the company's financial issues were resolved, Quantum Innovations had become incredibly busy. I'd been working nonstop for several days with no time to think about romance. When my gossiping colleagues saw Blake calling me into his office, their eyes no longer lit up with interest, only sympathy. When Blake scolds someone, he doesn't discriminate between men and women, the living or the dead. He never actually yells or uses harsh words, but he creates this inexplicable psychological pressure, the kind that makes you lie in bed 2 or 3 nights later still thinking about it. Then you sit up and slap yourself. How could I have made such a mistake? This project was urgent, and after a month of hard work, we finally made progress and could take a brief rest. Blake gave us 2 days off. When your mind and body suddenly relax after being tense for so long, it's easy to fall ill. That's exactly what happened to me. During those 2 days, I spent a day and a half lying in bed, half dead. My mom was back in her hometown, so Oliver took time off school to look after me. I scolded him. "Your final exams are coming up." Oliver replied, "Amy, I'd rather take care of you than stare at those incomprehensible textbooks." Oliver was at his wits' end. Having time-traveled from 2035, he'd been out of school for 10 years and had completely forgotten his high school knowledge. He couldn't understand the lessons, nor could he learn them anew. I didn't have the energy to lecture him anymore. "Get me some water." After saying that, I wearily closed my eyes again. Oliver placed a glass of water on my bedside table, then went to check on the soup simmering on the stove in the kitchen. He called out, "Amy, I'm going downstairs to take out the rubbish. I'll be right back." Oliver had just thrown the rubbish into the bin when he spotted a young woman walking towards their building while talking on her phone. Strange. Why isn't she answering? Hannah tried calling several times, but got no response. Without thinking too much about it, she decided to check on the patient directly. As she approached Amy's building, she heard some whistles from a few construction workers sitting on the steps nearby. "Hey, beautiful. How much?" one of them called out. Hannah, known for her quick temper, immediately snapped back at them. The construction worker who whistled darkened his face, feeling humiliated, and stood up abruptly. "Say that again." "Had too much toilet water?" Hannah repeated emotionlessly. "Had too much toilet water. Had too much toilet water."
"I've said it 3 times. What are you going to do about it?"
She had learned kickboxing since childhood and was confident she could handle these men. The man exploded with anger and rushed forward, raising his hand to strike. Just as Hannah was about to dodge, she caught a glimpse of someone lunging forward from the corner of her eye, tackling the man to the ground.
"Damn.
How dare you try to hurt my wife? I'll end you, you beast." Hannah froze on the spot. Within seconds, they were rolling on the ground, fighting. An hour later, at the hospital, Oliver sat obediently in the chair with his head wrapped in bandages. Hannah checked his wounds and stepped back with relief. Oliver sniffed. His wife smelled so nice. "Hannah, why aren't you at school, young man?" "My sister's ill, so I'm looking after her." Oliver stared at Hannah without blinking, making her feel slightly uncomfortable. "What are you staring at? Are you all right, Hannah? You're not hurt."
"No."
Hannah raised her hand to show him the scrape on her wrist. "If I hadn't pulled you out from their attack, I wouldn't even have gotten this small injury." Oliver looked at her with starry eyes. "Hannah, you're amazing." She needed to call Amy and ask if her brother had suffered some brain damage from the last car accident. He was acting rather strange. "How's your sister's illness? How did she catch such a bad cold so suddenly?" "She went to the hospital and took some medicine. She's sleeping now." "My sister." His voice trailed off. Suddenly, his eyes widened in panic. "Oh no, I left the stove on." He frantically searched for his phone, only to realize he hadn't brought it. Hannah quickly tried calling Amy again, but still no answer. "Hannah, can I borrow your phone? I know someone who lives near our flat." I slept like a log, and when I woke up, I was drenched in sweat, but feeling much better. A cool cloth fell from my forehead. Well, Oliver had finally grown a conscience after 10 years and learned to take care of others. I kept my eyes closed, enjoying his attention and boldly ordering him around. "Give me some water." The next second, a straw was placed between my lips. I took a few sips, relieving my burning throat. My whole body ached from sleeping, but I didn't have the strength to get up. I started bossing Oliver around again. "Massage my arms. They're so sore." Warm hands landed on my arms, and surprisingly, his massage technique was quite good. Perfect pressure, very comfortable. I was thoroughly enjoying it and let out a contented sigh. It was strange how my usually careless brother was being so attentive today. Feeling touched, I couldn't help but reach out blindly, finding his head. "You little rascal, you've really won me over today. Tell me, what reward would you like?" The moment those words left my mouth, I froze. Something wasn't right. The texture was wrong. My brother had a crew cut. It should feel prickly. Why was it so soft? I snapped my eyes open and found myself staring directly at Blake sitting beside my bed. My hand was still on his hair. The air froze. I yanked my hand back as if electrocuted, shrinking into my duvet, staring at him in horror. You. Blake remained composed, silently re-soaking the cloth that had slipped from my forehead in cold water, wringing it out and folding it meticulously. "Oliver's at the hospital," he said, his voice deeper than usual. Hospital. I almost jumped up, but dizziness hit me. Blake reached out to steady me. "Don't panic.
He's fine.
Just got into a small altercation. Minor injuries. Your friend Hannah is with him at the hospital." He briefly explained what had happened downstairs. I listened with growing anxiety and anger. "Then, why are you here?" I finally asked the most crucial question. Blake gently placed the cool cloth on my forehead, the cold sensation clearing my foggy mind somewhat. "Oliver called me using Hannah's phone, saying you were sick at home. The stove was still on, and he couldn't return yet. He asked me to check on you," he paused, adding, "I live nearby." The reason was sound, irrefutable. So, the person I'd been ordering around was Blake all along, and I'd touched his hair, asked him what reward he wanted. Embarrassment and shame crashed over me like a tidal wave, my cheeks burning hot enough to fry an egg. I pulled the duvet up, burying my entire face in it. Thank you. I'm fine now. Please leave. I need to process this alone." "About that reward," Blake suddenly spoke, interrupting me. "Huh." I peeked out from under the duvet with just my eyes, looking at him bewildered. He met my gaze, his eyes focused, and repeated, "You said earlier any reward would do." "I didn't. That wasn't. Don't make things up. That was meant for Oliver." But the words stuck in my throat, impossible to voice when faced with his earnest expression. "So, what do you want?" Blake looked at me, then leaned in slightly, moving closer. I froze, gripping the sheets under the duvet, my palms growing sweaty. His warm breath brushed my ear, his voice low and clear. "I want you." My heart skipped a beat. "To get well soon. That's it." I was dumbfounded. He unplugged my phone charger from the bedside. Best to put it away when not in use. It could be a safety hazard. He straightened up, and I thought I caught a glimpse of a faint smile in his eyes, so quick I might have imagined it. "Thanks." My heart rate immediately slowed down. When Blake stood up, I noticed his white shirt was half wet. He explained, "I accidentally splashed some water earlier when getting you a drink." The damp shirt clung to his well-toned muscles, making them visible through the fabric. "Stop staring. Look away." Using my last bit of willpower, I tore my eyes away from him, lying back to stare blankly at the ceiling. "Since your fever's gone down, I'll head out now. My presence is making you uncomfortable." He put on his coat. "Call me if you need anything." I nodded. "Thank you." After Blake left, I let out a long breath, sinking into complete confusion. Turning to get another drink, I noticed Blake's phone on my bedside table. I grabbed it, intending to chase after him, but the screen lit up with a messaging app notification. I paused when I saw the sender's name. Oliver had messaged future brother-in-law. "How's my sister?" Sweet of him to be concerned. The next second, "Oliver, did you seduce her yet? That always works on her." I'm going to end him when he gets back." Blake must have realized he'd left his phone behind. I heard movement in the living room. I quickly placed the phone back and lay down, closing my eyes. Blake entered quietly. He picked up his phone but didn't leave immediately. Just as I was about to give up pretending, I heard him move. Blake bent down slightly, pressing his cool lips to my cheek in a brief kiss. He pulled my duvet up a bit, checked my temperature with his hand, then silently left my room. I opened my eyes.
My hand went to my chest.
Oh no, my heart's malfunctioning, beating so fast it feels like it might explode. The illness came and went quickly. I only took one extra day off before returning to work with renewed energy. That day, I worked until around 7 or 8 in the evening, finally catching up with all the backlog. Stretching my arms, I noticed that all my colleagues had already left. After spacing out in my chair for a moment, I got up to turn off the lights. Passing by Blake's office, something made me glance inside, and I froze. Blake was still here. The office lights were off, and he had fallen asleep at his desk. I walked in and stood beside him for a moment, deciding to wake him up. I gently touched his hand that was hanging over the edge of the desk. As I touched it a second time, Blake softly caught my fingers. He sat up, his face showing slight drowsiness. "Are you heading home?" I nodded.
Yes.
"Why did you fall asleep here?" Blake put on his glasses and stood up, putting on his coat. "I was waiting for you. I won't interfere with your work, and I don't think you need me to give you any special treatment. There wasn't much else I could do, so I thought I'd wait here until you finished." His expression while saying this was similar to when he was lecturing someone, just as composed but somehow different. "Let's go home." I couldn't help but ask Blake a question that had been bothering me for a long time. "If you liked me back then, why did you try to set me up with Ethan?" Blake remained silent for a while before answering. "Because of my insecurity." This was an answer I had never expected. I looked at him in surprise. In my eyes, Blake had always been brilliant, capable, and radiant. Someone like him could feel insecure? Blake said, "I'm not good with words, and I'm rather reserved. I'm different from Ethan. He's eloquent and knows how to charm girls. So when I discovered that you liked Ethan, I felt that it was right, that it was normal. I thought if you knew I was the one who left the jacket at the library, you would thank me, and that would be it. I would just be a kind senior in your eyes, nothing more. Your feelings for Ethan weren't just because of a jacket given when you needed it most." I gazed silently at the neon lights outside the window. "You thought I wouldn't like you, so you pretended to be generous and tried to match me with Ethan." "Yes, that's what I thought at the time, but I regretted it soon after." Blake's lips tightened slightly. "Seeing you dating Ethan drove me mad with jealousy." I stared back at him in astonishment. After a long while, I said, "There's something you might not know." "What is it?" "I have very observant eyes. Blake, if you had told me from the beginning that you were the one who left that jacket, I would have noticed you. I would have paid more attention to you, observed you more. I would have fallen for you. You're not inferior to Ethan." Blake's grip on the steering wheel tightened. After a long silence, he suddenly hit the wheel and pulled over to the side of the road. "Blake, you..." "Sorry, I can't drive right now." He took off his glasses and rested his forehead on his hands on the steering wheel. After a few seconds, he suddenly laughed. My heart's beating rather fast. I sat beside him, looking down at my palms, hardly daring to move. It had taken all my courage to say those words. "Amy." Blake suddenly called my name. "Would you like to see it?" "See what?" Blake leaned back in his seat, turning to me with a smile. "The tattoo on my lower back. Aren't you curious about it?" It was my first time visiting Blake's home. Unlike those pristine mansions of wealthy CEOs shown in TV dramas, his flat had a warm, cozy feel with its comfortable decor and well-kept interior. "Make yourself at home," Blake said as he went to the kitchen to fetch me a glass of water. I held the glass nervously, my fingertips turning white from gripping it too tightly. The warm water did little to ease my dry throat or calm my racing heart. Blake stood before me, his gaze steady and intense. Then his long fingers moved to the buttons of his shirt, deliberately beginning to undo them. One, then two. My eyes couldn't help but follow his movements, watching as his elegant collarbone gradually appeared, followed by his well-defined chest. The warm lighting fell across his body, highlighting the subtle contours of his lean muscles. My face burned instantly. I tried to appear composed as I took another sip of water. My legs were trembling terribly. "Didn't you want to see?" He turned around, showing me his back. I looked up, my breath catching in my throat. On the left side of his narrow waist, within a design of 2 crescent moons, I could clearly see two floral letters, my initials. The tattoo wasn't flashy. It lay quietly against his taut skin like a secret etched into his flesh. At this moment, that secret was completely exposed to me. I stared in amazement, unconsciously reaching out. Just as my fingertips were about to touch his skin, his hand swiftly covered mine, stopping my movement. Amy. He turned his head, his voice husky. I agreed to let you see it, but I never said anything about letting you touch. I couldn't meet his eyes, feeling embarrassed. I tried to withdraw my hand, but Blake wouldn't let go. Maintaining his grip, he turned to face me. The space between us suddenly felt incredibly small. He slowly leaned down, his arms braced against the sofa back on either side of me, trapping me between himself and the couch. His distinctive clean scent enveloped me. I was caught between fight and flight. His deep eyes locked onto mine, emotions churning within them. It's your turn to answer my question. Why did you keep my ID photo? My heart fluttered. So he had seen Oliver's withdrawn message after all. Under his intense gaze, there was nowhere to hide. Resignedly lowering my eyelashes, I stared at his collarbone and whispered, "Because I fancy you." I raised my eyes to meet his. After breaking up with Ethan, he explained the misunderstanding at the library. I couldn't help but notice you after that. I developed feelings for you, but I wasn't planning to tell you. I pressed my lips together, somewhat self-deprecating. I was afraid you'd think I was fickle, falling for someone else right after ending a relationship. So I backed away, I said softly. Later, one time at the community service organization office, I found your ID photo that you dropped, and on impulse, I kept it. After saying this, I couldn't bear to look into his eyes anymore and lowered my head again. The living room fell into silence, filled only with our intermingled, slightly rapid breathing. Suddenly, he reached out, his warm fingertips gently lifting my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze again. Those eyes, usually so calm and composed, now resembled a dark sea burning with hidden fire, churning with complex emotions. The next moment, he lowered his head and kissed me. It started gentle and tentative, filled with exploration and tenderness. But soon those long-suppressed feelings burst forth like a breaking dam. His kiss became deeper and more urgent, carrying an almost greedy desire. My mind went blank as I passively received and awkwardly responded to his kiss. My palms instinctively pressed against his chest, feeling the heat of his skin and the strong beating of his heart beneath my fingertips. In the confined space of the sofa, the temperature suddenly soared. Blake's phone, carelessly tossed on the table, kept receiving messages one after another. "Future brother-in-law, you absolutely must clear up this rubbish about the first love thing with my sister. Otherwise, it'll cause problems. Could lead to a divorce crisis in the future." Really? My sister actually has your ID photo. She treasures it quite a bit. My sister acts tough, but she's soft-hearted. Really easy to win over. Why not try seduction? Don't be too subtle. She might not get it. Just take your shirt off. Show those muscles. Trust me, it'll work. After you're married, she'll be all over you. She's totally into your physique. Bro, why aren't you responding? Bro, isn't my sister finished with work yet? What are you two up to? Why is no one answering me? Don't do this to me. I'm getting worried. I have started a relationship with Blake. When Oliver heard about this, he jumped up excitedly at home. That's my matchmaking skills for you. I'm the ultimate wingman. When I get back to 2035, I'll make Blake treat me to meals for a whole month. As he said this, his enthusiasm deflated. Will I ever be able to go back? I sat beside him, trying to comfort him. It's all right. Even if you can't go back, you've got your final exams in a week. He grabbed his backpack and started to leave, but I caught him by the collar. Where are you going? To see Hannah. She promised to help me revise. I frowned at him. You and her. You and her. Was what you said before actually true? Oliver looked at me with utmost seriousness. Everything I told you was true. Hannah will be my wife. I started pursuing her in university. Chased her for 7 whole years. She finally agreed to marry me. But then I had that car accident and ended up here. I found it incredible. She's 5 years older than you. And aren't you two barely acquainted? What does 5 years matter? I love her. Oliver was remarkably frank. I've liked her for ages. Hannah is way cooler than you. She's amazing. Back in secondary school, when some bullies were harassing me, she sorted them out. My wife. My dear wife.
Crash.
A sudden noise came from the doorway. I jumped, rushing to throw open the door. There stood Hannah, looking thunderstruck. Her gaze shifted from me to Oliver, who stood frozen in the living room. Hannah's face turned bright red, and she turned and fled. Oliver reacted faster than I did. He sprinted after her. Hannah, let me explain. 3 days before Oliver's final exams, my mom sent me to the temple to pray for him. My mom believes in all that stuff, and there's no talking her out of it. Blake went with me. The temple was crowded with people praying for their children's exams. I knelt on the prayer cushion, sincerely praying for my troublesome brother, hoping he'd do well in his final exams without causing any more drama. When I stood up, I noticed Blake wasn't outside the hall. Walking around to the back garden, I spotted him standing under the ancient love tree decorated with red ribbons. He was reaching up, tying a new red wish ribbon to one of the branches. Sunlight filtered through the dense leaves, casting dappled shadows over him. I quietly walked up and wrapped my arms around his waist from behind. "What are you wishing for?" "For us to be official," he said with a smile in his voice, turning around to show me the ribbon he just hung. Written on the red ribbon in his strong handwriting were our names side by side. Blake Morgan and Amy Bennett. My heart fluttered as if something had gently brushed against it. Looking up into his eyes, I could see my reflection clearly in them. No need to wish for that. I rose on my tiptoes to give him a quick peck on the lips, a smile spreading across my face. "You've had that for ages." He was about to say something when my phone rang in my pocket. It was my mom. Her voice panicked and tearful. "Amy, Oliver fainted at school while collecting his exam admission card. He's in hospital now, still unconscious." My mind went blank. "Don't worry, we'll go there right away." Blake's steady voice came from beside me as he firmly held my hand, helping me stay calm. When we arrived at the hospital, Oliver was still unconscious. The doctors had run various tests. His vital signs were stable, but they couldn't determine the cause of his fainting. My mom was crying nearby, and Hannah had arrived too, her brow furrowed with concern. Time crept by agonizingly slowly as the sunset cast an orange glow through the hospital room. There was finally movement from the bed. Oliver's eyelashes fluttered, and he slowly opened his eyes. He looked around the white walls with confusion, then at all of us gathered around his bed, finally fixing his gaze on the digital calendar on the wall. He suddenly sat up, almost pulling out his foreline, showing no signs of weakness, but rather intense excitement. I'm back, he exclaimed, waving his arms, his voice cracking with excitement. "Let someone else deal with that rubbish work in 2035. I'm finally back. Final exams. I'm taking my final exams." My mom's hand shook as she felt his forehead. "Oliver, are you sure you haven't hurt your head?" Oliver grabbed her hand, his eyes incredibly bright. "Mom, I'm not mad. I just went on a little trip." His gaze turned to Blake and me, breaking into a cheeky grin. "Sis, brother-in-law, you two already, huh? That's brilliant." Finally, his eyes landed on Hannah, who was visibly relieved. His ears turned red without him noticing. Blake and I exchanged glances, both realizing what had happened. The boisterous future Oliver, who had traveled from 2035, had departed with this fainting spell. The one who had awakened was the real teenager of this time, full of youth and vigor. As Blake and I left the room, we heard Oliver shouting with full strength. "I ranked third from bottom in the mock exams. Was that Oliver an idiot or what?"